Hello guys and welcome to Zandvoort for round 1 of FRL's Taco Tuesday. I'm starting in the BMW in position 2 here alongside Jetpack Nebula in the Porsche as we head down into turn 1, then moving across to the right hand side to cover off any moves from behind. And we've had a decent start there, getting through turn 1 nice and cleanly. I haven't done too much driving around Zandvoort in the past. This is actually my first race I've ever done here. I've only ever done practice sessions before, so it's going to be interesting to see what I can get out of this race. Obviously I started in P2. I was a little bit disappointed with my qualifying lap. I just took a bit too much curb near the end of the lap and cost myself any chance of getting on pole because it was my last flying lap of the session. But P2, it's going to be difficult to overtake here. There's not any real overtaking opportunities and the start finish rate is quite small, so there's not enough chance to really pick up a toe and get your nose in front heading into turn 1. So we're going to have to try and do it on strategy if we can, I think, but we're going to have to see how this race plays out. And you never know, Jetpacker, as he goes a little bit wide there through the very long awkward left-hander, we just need to keep the pressure on, a bit like we did a couple of weeks ago at Imola against Michael Racers, and look to just capitalise on any mistakes up ahead. Coming across the start line then to begin lap number 2 in this race, and you can see Jetpacker has already made a bit of a gap between us, and I thought he made a mistake going into turn 1 here, but it turns out it's just his internet connection, I think. So that's going to be a little bit distracting if that carries on for the rest of the race. It's very easy to make a mistake when you're following the driver in front. You can see here it's just jumping around a little bit. So just his internet connection could do with a bit of an upgrade, I think, looking at that. So we're going to have to just make sure we're really nailing those braking points and turning points, because like I said, it's so easy to just copy what the car in front's doing, and then if they do make a mistake or if their connection makes it appear like they're doing something differently, you can quite easily copy that. So you really don't want to make any mistakes that you can avoid. Skipping ahead another couple of laps then, and Jetpacker had really good pace at the start of the race, so I just had to try and match his lap times as best as I could, and we had Rob in 3rd place putting in some decent times as well, just keeping us on our toes. But come across the line the lap later and I've just gone a few tenths quicker, so I was maintaining that gap at about 1.5 seconds for the first part of this race. There was not really much I could do to get any closer than that to Jetpacker at this point, because he was just putting in very good laps and was being very consistent with them as well. But when I did a few practice runs a couple of days before, I noticed that the tyres would start to lose their grip towards the end of the stint. So I was really just trying to keep him within that 1.5 second window, but looking after the tyres at the same time, because I knew they would start to come back to me towards the end of the stint. And by lap number 10 the gap had come right down now to under a second, so it definitely looks like Jetpacker is starting to struggle with those tyres. Mine are still feeling very good, and the fuel is obviously being burnt up as we go, so the cars are getting lighter all the time. The car's really starting to come to me. I'm gaining on Jetpacker up ahead all the time, and I just start to get the sense that I might be able to put him under some pressure over the next coming laps and potentially look to try and get past before we even get to the round of pit stops. Coming through the final corner, and I am now close enough to start picking up the toe, which is really going to help me gain time and get right onto the bumper of that Porsche in front. Heading into turn number 1 then, and just trying to keep the pressure on as best I can. And on lap number 12 then, you can see Jetpacker has gone a bit deep into turn 1, and we're not quite close enough yet to stick it up the inside, but I can just get a feeling that my time is starting to come. Through the long left-hander then, the very banked corner, you can see just how good this Porsche is on under acceleration. It's really hard to stick with it coming out of the corners, but once we're in a straight line I do start to gain a bit on the Porsche. And looking back then from the rear wing, and the Porsche sporting the Red Kings motorsport livery there, and the BMW gaining all the time. Lap number 13 then, heading down towards the first corner, just sticking my nose out there to try and put him off a little bit, and it looks like it has actually worked, and he goes a little bit deep, and once again I'm able to close right up to the back of him, but no real overtaking opportunity just yet, but hopefully it will come over the next coming laps. We've got about 8 minutes until the pit stop window is going to start. The pit stop window is already open, but until the time when it makes most sense to pit. And again, you can just see under acceleration, the Porsche just able to get away. But jumping round to the end of the lap then, we're very, very close going through the final corner here. And this looks like we're going to have an opportunity. The Porsche runs a little bit wide. We kind of follow through, and we're really starting to pick up the toe now, getting right onto the back of him. He's going to have to move over to the right-hand side to go defensive, but there's not much we're going to be able to do around the outside of the corner. We just have to bide our time for the moment. Like I said earlier in the video, it's very, very difficult to make any moves, overtaking moves at Zandvoort, because the track is very narrow. It's a bit like a roller coaster, really. It's a very enjoyable track to drive though, and once again you'll just see as we go up the hill, the Porsche just has the edge and starts to pull away. But we're right on the back of him as we go through the final 2 corners. Once again, he's just put 2 wheels in the gravel there, and looks like he's running a little bit wide through the final corner, potentially having to lift off the throttle there. So picking up the toe once again. Looks like I'm gaining on him quite a lot there, but there's just a bit of rubber banding going on due to his internet connection. And again, he places his car very nicely on the inside, and again, not much I'm able to do on the outside of the corner then. And after another lap of following quite closely, but not really getting close enough to go for a move, I decided to pit a little bit early and see if I could get an undercut. Heading up to the pit box then, and really trying to make sure I nail it, which I fortunately did this time. And the car pops up exactly how it should, leaving the pit lane into some nice clear air. Then I'm going to have cold tyres, and I don't want to push too much on this first lap because I don't want to end up with any graining on the tyres. And then Jetpacker comes in the next lap to cover it off, and it looks like he's also had a good pit stop as I just get a bit carried away and go a little bit deep into turn 1 then. But on this lap he's going to be having cold tyres, and that's really going to give us an advantage for around about a lap or so. And you can see all over the back of the Porsche here, through the very long awkward S-bend, and then the long left-hander taking a nice wide turn in to see if I can get a bit of a switcheroo coming out of the corner, and then heading down into the only corner with a really nasty curb really, but it's very, very hard to make any kind of overtake into that corner. And then coming through the long left-hander, the Porsche is very, very good on acceleration out of there. And the final 2 corners, I think really the Porsche is probably going to have his tyres up to temperature now. But going through the final corner, we take a slightly nicer line than Jetpacker does, and get a fairly decent run as we get onto the start-finish straight. And again, starting to pick up that toe, and it looks like we decide to stick our nose out to the right-hand side just to try and put him off a little bit, but unable to fool him this time. And now that Jetpacker's tyres were up to temperature, he did build a bit of a gap, put in some good lap times, and again the gap dropped to about 1.5 seconds, and I just maintained that for a number of laps really, just trying to keep him within touching distance, and full well knowing that once we got to the end of the race, we're probably going to end up in a similar situation to the first half of the race where his tyres started to drop off. And lap number 30 then, you can see he's run a little bit wide there, and he's just able to defend it off. I wasn't quite close enough to take advantage of that, but this is when it's going to begin. This is kind of round 2 essentially from the first half of the race before the pit stops, and I think his tyres are starting to go now. We're going to have the advantage once again, and this time we really need to try to take advantage and see if we can get past. Jumping ahead on to the end of the following lap then, and very close coming through the final corner. We're going to pick up a toe once again. Jetpacker is going to move over to the right hand side just to fend off the inside of the corner going into turn 1, and we're not quite close enough to go for a move here, but he does run a little bit deep, and we're not quite close enough to get up the inside. But it's only going to be a matter of time surely. We're all over the back of him for most of the lap now through the long bank left-hander, but the Porsche is able to just pull away on this lap and get a bit of a gap going up the hill. But by the end of the lap we are much closer again, and he's just going to cover the inside once again, but this time places his car very nicely on the inside of the track, so we're not able to stick our nose in this time. And then we have another run on the next lap. Just watch the Porsche very closely here. As we get into the braking zone, he jumps back quite a lot, so I go for a move down the inside, but there's a little bit of contact. I think that was a combination of me perhaps being a little bit late on the brakes and going slightly deeper, but also due to the connection issue. I don't think Jetpacker quite realised where I was at that moment in time, so went to take the normal line, and not realising I probably on his screen jumped straight into there. So on to the second to last lap of the race. Then you can see how close we're able to follow through these final corners, but I've just got a pressure loss in the right front, so starting to have to nurse a slow puncher now just to add to the drama over the last 2 minutes left in this race. But Jetpacker is obviously struggling on those tyres as well, so this is going to be very, very close. Just 0.3 seconds separating us as we go through these corners for the second to last time, trying to stay off the curb to avoid stressing that front right tyre too much. The Porsche gets a very good exit out of the slow left-hander, and that was going to be absolutely crucial to nail these final 2 corners of this lap, because I need to get a run on him going into turn 1. It's going to be the last opportunity to perhaps get that toe and look to make an overtake into turn 1. We do take a nice line through the final corner. Looks like the Porsche has run a little bit wide. We tuck in behind, pull out of the slipstream. The Porsche sticks to the right hand side as we start the final lap of the race. Then on the outside, the Porsche goes in a little bit too deep. That moves us to the inside. There's a little bit of a tap from the rear of the car, but we get that move done. You can see in the mirrors the Porsche jumping all over the place with that connection issue he's struggling from, but we have moved up into first place on the final lap of the race. Just about a half a lap to go. Then can I maintain this first place and take a crucial win in round 1 of the Taco Tuesday Championship? It looks like the Porsche is potentially dropping back a little bit now, and it goes a bit wide through the fast right-hander, and that looks like that might have sealed the win for me here. And we do come around the final corner then to take victory in round 1 of Taco Tuesdays, and that means we're going to be sitting at top of the championship after this race. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make every race this season though, so I think the chance of me actually winning the championship are quite slim, but I'll give it my absolute best every single race. Now, I hope you enjoyed watching this video, guys. I will post the setup I used for this race in my next video, and there'll be a link of that at the end of this one if that has been posted. For now though, I hope you enjoyed the video. Give it a like if you did. Let me know how you got on if you were racing in Taco Tuesdays this week, and I will see you again very soon.